Good afternoon, hello, and shalom to all my mishpacha and haverim through Yeshua in Yahweh and all who join us here. Many blessings to you for your interest in hearing the Torah of YHWH. Before we start, let's bow our hearts and pitch this tent with our Elohim. Beloved Abba Yahweh, we come before you, Father, to worship and praise you, and to thank you most humbly for bringing us here together for the sharing of your word, your loving and caring guidelines. Thank you for marking us and calling us out to know your name. Please open up our eyes to see, our ears to hear, and our hearts to understand that which you will us to see, hear and understand within these words. Please, Father, lift us up on the wing of your breath and have us be servants of your will. Through Yeshua in Yahweh, our Kodesh Elohim, Yahweh Ehad. Amen. Okay, so I've left the glossary and the pronunciation guide up, and we'll carry on with the Torah of YHWH today. Today's reading will cover sexual defilements, men, women, and hopefully we'll get to marriage too. So thank you for joining me. Let's start. Sexual defilements, nakedness of family. Leviticus chapter 18 verse 6 and chapter 18 verse 29 to 30. No one is to approach anyone of his own flesh to uncover his nakedness. I am Yahweh. For whoever does any of these abominations, those beings who do them shall be cut off from among their people, and you shall guard my charge, so as not to do any of these abominable practices which were done before you, so as not to defile yourselves by them. I am Yahweh, your Elohim. Parents' nakedness, Leviticus 18, chapter 18, verse 7. The nakedness of your father or the nakedness of your mother you do not uncover. She is your mother, you do not uncover her nakedness. See also Leviticus 20, chapter 20, verse 11, and Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 30. Neighbour's wife, Leviticus chapter 20, verse 10. And a man who commits adultery with with the wife of another man, who commits adultery with the wife of his neighbour, the adulterer and the adulteress shall certainly be put to death. See also Exodus chapter 20 verse 14 and Leviticus chapter 18 verse 20 and Deuteronomy chapter 5 verse 18 and Deuteronomy chapter 22 verse 22. Stepmother, Leviticus chapter 20 verse 11. And a man who lies with the wife of his father has uncovered the nakedness of his father. Both of them shall certainly be put to death. Their blood is upon them. See also Leviticus chapter 18 verse 8 and Deuteronomy chapter 22 verse 30. Daughter-in-law, Leviticus chapter 20 verse 12. And a man who lies with his daughter-in-law, both of them shall certainly be put to death. They have made confusion, their blood is upon them. See also Leviticus 18:15. A woman and her mother, Leviticus 20:14. And a man who marries a woman and her mother, it is wickedness. They are burned with fire, both he and they, that there be no wickedness in your midst. See also Leviticus chapter 18, verse 17. Sister, Leviticus chapter 20, verse 17. And a man who takes his sister, his father's daughter or his mother's daughter, and sees her nakedness, and sees his nakedness, it is a reproach, and they shall be cut off before the eyes of their people. He has uncovered his sister's nakedness. He bears his wickedness. See also Leviticus chapter 18 verse 9. Granddaughter. Leviticus chapter 18 verse 10. The nakedness of your son's daughter or your daughter's daughter, their nakedness you do not uncover, for theirs is your own nakedness. Stepsister. Leviticus chapter 18 verse 11. The nakedness of your father's wife's daughter, brought forth by your father, she is your sister, you do not uncover her nakedness. Aunt. Leviticus chapter 20 verse 19. And do not uncover the nakedness of your mother's sister, nor of your father's sister, for that is laying bare one's own flesh. They bear their wickedness. See also Leviticus chapter 18 verses 12 and 13. Uncle. Leviticus chapter 18 verse 14. The nakedness of your father's brother you do not uncover. You do not approach his wife, she is your aunt. Sister-in-law. Leviticus. Sister-in-law. Leviticus chapter 20 verse 21. And a man who takes his brother's wife, it is uncleanness. He has uncovered his brother's nakedness. They are childless. See also Leviticus chapter 18 verse 16. A woman's sister. Leviticus chapter 18 verse 18. And do not take a woman as a rival to her sister, to uncover her nakedness while the other is alive. Okay. A woman in her menstruation. Leviticus chapter 20 verse 18. And a man who lies with a woman during her sickness and uncovers her nakedness, he has laid bare her flow, and she has uncovered the flow of her blood. Both of them shall be cut off from the midst of their people. See also Leviticus chapter 15 verse 25 and Leviticus chapter 18 verse 19. Uncle's wife. Leviticus chapter 20 verse 20. And a man who lies with his uncle's wife, he has uncovered his uncle's nakedness. They bear their sin. They die childless. See also Leviticus chapter 18 verse 14. Man with a man. Leviticus chapter 20 verse 13. And a man who lies with a male, as he lies with a woman, both of them have done an abomination. They shall certainly be put to death. Their blood is upon them. See also Leviticus chapter 18 verse 22 and Genesis chapter 18 verse 20 and Genesis chapter 19 verse 5. Lying with a beast. Leviticus chapter 20 verse 15. And a man who has intercourse with a beast, he shall certainly be put to death. And the beast you kill. And a woman who approaches any beast and mates with it, you shall kill the woman and the beast. They shall certainly be put to death. Their blood is upon them. See also Exodus 22, chapter 22 verse 19, Leviticus chapter 18 verse 23, and Deuteronomy chapter 27 verse 21. Okay. Men. Circumcision. Chapter on men. Leviticus chapter 12 verses 2 and 3. When a woman has conceived and has given birth to a male child, then on the 8th day the flesh of his foreskin is circumcised. See also Genesis chapter 17 verse 10 and verse 14 and verse 23 to 27, and Genesis chapter 21 verse 4 and chapter 34 verse 15, and then Exodus chapter 4 verse 25, chapter 12 verse 48, and Leviticus chapter 12 verse 3. Appearing before Yahweh. Deuteronomy chapter 16 verse 16. 3 times a year all your males appear before Yahweh your Elohim in the place which he chooses at the festival of Matzoth and at the festival of Shabuot and at the festival of Sukkot. And none should appear before Yahweh empty-handed, each one with the gift of his hand, according to the Berachah of Yahweh your Elohim, which he has given you. See also Exodus chapter 23 verse 17 and Exodus chapter 34 verse 23, hair and beard. Leviticus chapter 19 verse 27, do not round the corner of your head, nor destroy the corner of your beard. See also Leviticus chapter 21 verse 5 and Deuteronomy chapter 14 verse 1. Lying with a man. Leviticus chapter 20 verse 13, and a man who lies with a male as he lies with a woman, both of them have done an abomination, they shall certainly be put to death. Their blood is upon them. See also Leviticus chapter 18 verse 22 and Genesis chapter 18 verse 20 and Genesis chapter 19 verse 5. Lying with a beast, Leviticus chapter 20 verse 15, and a man who has intercourse with a beast, he shall certainly be put to death, and the beast you kill. See also Exodus chapter 22 verse 19, Leviticus chapter 18 verse 23 and Deuteronomy chapter 27 verse 21. Wearing women's clothing, Deuteronomy chapter 22 verse 5, a woman does not wear that which pertains to a man, nor does a man put on a woman's garment. For whoever does this is an abomination to Yahweh your Elohim. May I just say here that means, I should imagine that it feels like it means, that a woman does not put on man's clothing that is made for the shape of a man. And it doesn't mean she can't wear trousers. She can. There's trousers made for women. And a man cannot put on women's clothing that is made for the shape of a woman. What would he be doing in those clothing anyway? Anyway, I just thought I'd make that totally clear. Continuing. A man enticing a maiden. Exodus chapter 22 verse 16 to 17. And when a man entices a maiden who is not engaged and lies with her, he shall certainly pay the bride price for her to be his wife. If her father absolutely refuses to give her to him, he pays according to the bride price of maidens. See also Deuteronomy chapter 22 verses 28 and 29. A vow. Numbers chapter 30 verse 2. When a man vows a vow to Yahweh or swears an oath to bind himself by some agreement, he does not break his word. He does according to all that comes out of his mouth. Or, if a woman vows a vow to Yahweh and binds herself by some agreement while in her father's house, in her youth, and her father hears her vow and the agreement by which she has bound herself, and her father has kept silent towards her, then all her vows shall stand, and every agreement with which she has bound herself stands. But if her father forbids her on the day that he hears, then none of her vows, sorry, my glasses were falling off, nor her agreements by which she has bound herself stand, and Yahweh pardons her because her father has forbidden her. But if she at all belongs to a husband, while bound by her vows or by a rash utterance from her lips by which she bound herself, and her husband hears it, and he has kept silent towards her on the day that he hears, then her vows shall stand, and her agreements by which she bound herself do stand. But if her husband forbids her on the day that he hears it, then he has nullified her vow which she vowed, and the rash utterance of her lips by which she bound herself, and Yahweh pardons her. But any vow of a widow, that's me, or a divorced woman, by which she has bound herself, stands against her. And if she vowed in her husband's house, or bound herself by an agreement with an oath, and her husband heard it, and has kept silent towards her, and did not forbid her, then all her vows shall stand, and every agreement by which she bound herself stands. But if her husband certainly nullified them on the day he heard them, then whatever came from her lips concerning her vows or concerning the agreement binding her, it does not stand. Her husband has nullified them, and Yahweh pardons her. Every vow and every binding oath to afflict her being, let her husband confirm it, or let her husband nullify it. But if her husband is altogether silent at her from day to day, then he confirms all her vows, or all the agreements that bind her, he confirms them, because he kept silent toward her on the day that he heard. But if he nullifies them after he has heard, then he shall bear her wickedness. Inheritance of the firstborn, Deuteronomy, chapter 21, verses 15 to 17. When a man has two wives, one loved and the other unloved, and they have borne him children, both the loved and the unloved, and the firstborn son is of her who is unloved, then it shall be that on the day he makes his sons to inherit his possessions, he is not allowed to treat the son of the beloved wife as firstborn in the face of the son of the unloved, who is the firstborn. But he is to acknowledge the son of the unloved wife as the firstborn by giving him a double portion of all that he has, for he is the beginning of his strength. The right of his firstborn of the firstborn is his. Thank you. Emission in the night, Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 10 and 11. When there is any man among you who is not clean because of an emission in the night, then he shall go outside the camp. Let him not come into the midst of the camp. And it shall be toward evening that he bathes with water, and when the sun goes, let him come into the midst of the camp. See also Leviticus chapter 15, verse 16 to 18, and Leviticus chapter 22, verse 4. Now we're on to women lying with a beast. Leviticus chapter 20, verse 16, and a woman who approaches any beast and mates with it, you shall kill the woman and the beast. They shall certainly be put to death. Their blood is upon them. See also Exodus chapter 22, verse 19, Leviticus chapter 18, verse 23, and Deuteronomy chapter 27, verse 21, birth of a male. Leviticus chapter 12, verse 1 to 4. When a woman has conceived and has given birth to a male child, then she shall be unclean 7 days. As in the days of her monthly separation she is unclean. And on the 8th day the flesh of his foreskin is circumcised, and she remains in the blood of her cleansing 33 days. She does not touch whatever is Kodesh, and she does not come into the Mikdash until the days of her cleansing are completed. Wearing men's clothing. Deuteronomy chapter 22 verse 5. A woman does not wear that which pertains to a man, nor does a man put on a woman's garment. For whoever does this is an abomination to Yahweh, your Elohim. Seizing a man's genitals. Deuteronomy chapter 25 verse 11 to 12. When men fight together, a man with another, and the wife of one shall draw near to rescue her husband from the hand of the one attacking him, and shall put out her hand and seize him by the genitals, then you shall cut off her hand. Your eye does not pardon. Birth of a female. Leviticus chapter 12 verse 5. But if she gives birth to a female child, then she shall be unclean for 2 weeks, as in her monthly separation, and she remains in the blood of her cleansing for 66 days. Vow. A vow. Numbers chapter 30 verse 3 to 15. If a woman vows a vow to Yahweh and binds herself by some agreement while in her father's house in her youth, and her father hears her vow and the agreement by which she has bound herself, and her father has kept silent towards her, then all her vows shall stand, and every agreement with which she has bound herself stands. But if her father forbids her on the day that he hears, then none of her vows, nor her agreements by which she has bound herself stand, and Yahweh pardons her, because her father has forbidden her. But if she at all belongs to a husband, while bound by her vows, or by a rash utterance from her lips by which she bound herself, and her husband hears it, and he has kept silent towards her on the day that he hears, then her vows shall stand, and her agreements by which she bound herself do stand. But if her husband forbids her on the day that he hears it, then he has nullified her vow, which she vowed, and the rash utterance of her lips, by which she bound herself, and Yahweh pardons her. But any vow of a widow or a divorced woman, by which she has bound herself, stands against her. And if she vowed in her husband's house, or bound herself by an agreement with an oath, and her husband heard it, and has kept silent towards her, and did not forbid her, then all her vows shall stand, and every agreement by which she bound herself stands. But if her husband clearly nullified them on the day he heard them, then whatever came from her lips concerning her vows or concerning the agreement binding her, it does not stand. Her husband has nullified them, and Yahweh pardons her every vow and every binding oath to afflict her being. Let her husband confirm it, or let her husband nullify it. But if her husband is altogether silent at her from day to day, then he confirms all her vows, or all of the agreements that bind her, he confirms them, because he kept silent towards her on the day that he heard. But if he nullifies them after he has heard, then he shall bear her wickedness. Okay, marriage. Accusation against a wife. Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 13 to 19. When any man takes a wife, and shall go into her, and shall hate her, and shall make abusive charges against her, and bring an evil name on her, and say, I took this woman and when I came to her, I did not find her a maiden. Then the father and mother of the young woman shall take and bring out the proof of the girl's maidenhood to the elders of the city at the gate. And the girl's father shall say to the elders, I gave my daughter to this man as wife, and he hates her. And see, he has made abusive charges against her, saying, I did not find your daughter a maiden, and yet these are the proofs of my daughter's maidenhood. And they shall spread the garment before the elders of the city, and the elders of the city shall take that man and punish him, and fine him 100 pieces of silver, and give them to the father of the young woman, because he has brought an evil name on the maiden of Israel, and she is to be his wife. He is not allowed to put her away all his days. A wife who is not a maiden, Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 20 to 21. But if the matter is true that the girl was not found a maiden, then they shall bring out the girl to the door of her father's house, and the man of her city shall stone her to death with stones, because she has done wickedness in Israel, to whore in her father's house. Thus she shall purge the evil from your midst. Thus you shall purge the evil from your midst. A man seizing a maiden, Deuteronomy chapter 22, verses 28 and 29. When a man finds a girl who is maiden, who is not engaged, and he seizes her and lies with her, and they are found out, then the man who lay with her shall give to the girl's father 50 pieces of silver, and she is to be his wife, because he has humbled her. He is not allowed to put her away all his days. Certificate of divorce, Deuteronomy chapter 24, verse 1. When a man takes a wife and shall marry her, then it shall be, if she finds no favour in his eyes, because he has found a matter of shamefulness in her, and he shall write her a certificate of divorce, and put it in her hand, and send her out of his house, a divorced wife. Deuteronomy chapter 24, verse 2 to 4. And if she left his house and went and became another man's wife, and the latter husband shall hate her, and write her a certificate of divorce, and put it in her hand, and send her out of his house, or when the latter husband dies who took her to be his wife, then her former husband who sent her away is not allowed to take her back to be his wife after she has been defiled, for that would be an abomination before Yahweh. A wife suspected of adultery, Numbers chapter 5, verse 12 to 31. In brackets it's got Cohen. When any man's wife turns aside and has committed a trespass against him, and a man has intercourse with her, and it is hidden from the eyes of her husband, and it is concealed that she has defiled herself, and there was no witness against her, nor was she caught, and a spirit of jealousy comes upon him, and he becomes jealous of his wife who has defiled herself, or a spirit of jealousy comes upon him, and he becomes jealous of his wife, although she has not defiled herself, then the man shall bring his wife to the Kohen, the priest, and he shall bring the offering for her 1/10 of an ephah of barley flour. he is not to pour oil on it, or put frankincense on it, because it is a grain offering of jealousy, an offering for remembering, for bringing wickedness to remembrance. And the Cohen shall bring her near, and shall make her stand before Yahweh. And the Cohen shall take Kodesh water in an earthenware vessel, and take some of the dust that is on the floor of the Mishkan, and put it into the water. And the Cohen shall make the woman stand before Yahweh, and shall uncover the woman's head, and put the offering for remembering in her hands, which is the grain offering of jealousy, while the Cohen holds in his hand the bitter water that brings a curse. And the Cohen shall make her swear, and say to the woman, if no man has lain with you, and if you have not turned aside to uncleanness under your husband, be free from this bitter water that brings a curse. But if you have turned aside under your husband, and if you have defiled yourself, and some man other than your husband has lain with you, then the Cohen shall make the woman swear with the oath of the curse, and he shall say to the woman, Yahweh make you a curse and an oath among your people. When Yahweh makes your thigh waste away, and your abdomen swell, and this water that causes the curse shall go into your inward parts, and make your abdomen swell, and your thigh waste away. And the women shall say, Amen, Amen. And the Cohen shall write these curses in a book, and shall wipe them off into the bitter water, and shall make the woman drink the bitter water that brings the curse. And the water that brings the curse shall enter her to become bitter. And the Cohen shall take the grain offering of jealousy from the woman's hand, and shall wave the offering before Yahweh, and bring it to the altar. And the Cohen shall take a hand filled with the offering as its remembrance offering, and burn it on the altar, and afterward make the woman drink the water. And when he has made her drink the water, then it shall be, if she has defiled herself, and has committed a trespass against her husband, that the water that brings the curse shall enter her and become bitter, and her abdomen shall swell, and her thighs shall waste away, and the women shall become a curse among her people. But if the woman has not defiled herself, and is clean, then she shall be clear, and shall conceive children. Wow. This is the Torah of jealousy. Then when a wife turns aside under her husband and defiles herself, or when a spirit of jealousy comes upon a man, and he becomes jealous of his wife, then he shall make the woman stand before Yahweh, and the Cohen shall do to her all this Torah. And the man shall be clear from wickedness, but the woman bear her wickedness. Oh, that was heavy reading. Anyway, captives for wives, Deuteronomy 21, chapter 21, verse 10 to 14. When you go out to fight against your enemies, and Yahweh your Elohim shall give them into your hand, and you shall take them captive, and you see among the captives a woman lovely of form, and shall delight in her and take her for your wife, then you shall bring her home to your house, and she shall shave her head and trim her nails, and put aside the mantle of her captivity, and shall dwell in your house. and mourn her father and her mother a month of days. And after that you shall go into her, and be her husband, and she shall be your wife. And it shall be, if you are not pleased with her, then you shall let her go at her desire. But you do not sell her at all for silver. Do not treat her harshly, since you have humbled her. Exemption from service. Deuteronomy chapter 24, verse 5. When a man has taken a new wife, let him not go out into the army, nor let any matter be imposed upon him. He shall be exempt 1 year for the sake of his home, to rejoice with his wife whom he has taken. See also Deuteronomy chapter 20 verse 7. Duty to a brother's widow. Deuteronomy chapter 25 verse is 5 to 10. When brothers dwell together, and one of them has died, and has no son, the widow of the dead man shall not become a stranger's outside. Her husband's brother goes into her, and shall take her as his wife, and perform the duty of a husband's brother to her. And it shall be that the firstborn son which she bears rises up for the name of his dead brother, so that his name is not blotted out of Yisrael. But if the man does not desire to take his brother's wife, then let his brother's wife go up to the gate to the elders, and say, my husband's brother refuses to raise up a name to his brother in Israel. He does not agree to perform the duty of my husband's brother. The elders of his city shall then call him and speak to him, and he shall stand and say, I have no desire to take her. Then his brother's wife shall come to him in the presence of the elders, and remove his sandal from his foot, and shall spit in his face, and swear and say, thus it is done to the man who does not build up his brother's house, and in Israel his name shall be called the house of him who had his sandal removed. See also Genesis 38, chapter 38, verses 8 and 9. So much to hear and take in. Thank you for joining us to read these words. All praise and esteem to Abba Yahweh. All these guidelines for our own good to keep us clean. Thank you, Father, for washing and bathing us in your word. Thank you for caring so much about us and for wanting us home. Thank you for compelling us, for your patience and love for us, and thank you for each and every one of us. Many blessings to you, Father, through Yeshua in Yahweh. Yahweh Kodesh Elohim. Yahweh Echad is one. Amen. Onward and upward, Havarim and Mishpachah. See you soon here or there. Much love to you. May you all have shalom and many blessings in each step you take.